Good morning, listeners. This is Sonya Green with the
And
Coaches Cup podcast. And yeah,
sorry, and Jennifer Finney.
yeah, this morning we have a new face and a new voice on the Coaches Cup. Judith is out right now. She has a family emergency that she's taking care of. And so, my dear friend and long term coaching client, Jennifer Finney, is filling in today. So,
Hi, everybody.
yeah. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Jennifer?
Sure, I'm Jennifer. I live in Texas, and I have a wonderful husband who is a paramedic, and he's at work today. My two kids are 10 and 9. And let's see. I think that's about it. Oh yeah,
Okay.
that's it. That's good.
Okay. All right. We were joking earlier before we started that her y'all is authentic. And I said, we only have Southern women on this podcast. I don't know what it is, but we represent Tennessee and North Carolina and now Texas. So
Yeah.
all right. So today, we Jennifer and I were talking. Judith and I always pregame before the podcast, and as Jennifer and I were talking today, we were talking about how we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of dealing with COVID and how COVID has kind of taken over all of our lives in the last year. And so we decided to talk about today's topic of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And, coaching is usually very forward looking, but today we want to take a step back and look at the resilience that we have all developed over the last year.
Yeah, I think it's super important to really think about where we were this time last year. Life was just trucking along, going, 90 to nothing for most of us. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we were stopped. And I was telling Sonya, so she kind of recapped my year. I finished I finished grad school in the middle of the pandemic. I finished grad school. What else did you say? I got a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
My husband changed jobs. I got him. I managed to take control of our budget for the first time. And I'm a Gen Xer, so that means I'm old. I have, and anyways, um, but this year has just been crazy, and getting through it last year. This time last year was we were looking forward to. I was in the middle of grad school and getting ready to working hard on a project. It was one of my close to my last semester, and I was telling her I was grocery shopping when I got the text that said school is closed. Online classes, everything's closed from now till we get back to you, at least the next 2 weeks. And I think that's probably similar to what happened with Sonya.
Yeah. I don't even remember. I don't have that moment like you're talking about where you got the text. It's like I remember things that I was doing before COVID because I had just spent the weekend. My best friend from college and I had just spent the weekend together. And we had gone to the mall and we'd gone out to eat. And, and it seems like just the very next week, I started hearing this buzz about, school. And we in Nashville, we had a tornado on March 3rd. And so there's that defining moment. And then somehow COVID just kind of crept in right after that. And so
Yeah.
in fact, one of my memories that I try not to regret, but one of my students who is graduating, he sees me as we're going across campus and he says, Dr. Green, I may not see you again. And I was like, oh, you'll see me again. Don't worry about it. We'll see each other. And I haven't seen him since then. He went on to graduate school and, so I never got to say a proper goodbye because even though we knew COVID was coming, I didn't think that a year later we would still be doing this.
No. And that's what a lot of people have walked through, not getting to say a proper goodbye.
Yeah.
Right? And
A
so,
real proper goodbye. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, I graduated and I have yet to walk across the stage. I've got my cap and gown and there's hanging in my closet and that's pretty much it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but we've managed somehow to just keep moving forward. We are so resilient. Our kids are resilient.
Mhm.
We've all adapted and just take the next step. And I think that's really what we were looking at talking about today in terms of being resilient. And we can probably find evidence of resilience throughout our lives
Mhm.
where we just keep moving forward.
Taking that next
Um,
step.
Taking that next step. I know you guys don't talk about the Enneagram that much, but I know I'm a what is it? I'm a 6 wing 7. And basically what that means is my sixth self worries a lot and is a planner in terms of I plan for the worst case scenario that's always in my head. Right.
Mhm.
And so I have a problem. I have a tendency to dwell on that. And I
Yeah.
don't like to take next steps unless I know all the things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then my 7 side, my wing 7 is so a 7 is more open and free, right? And they're willing to do new things and they want to try new things and they're kind of random and I think that my sixness will pull in my 7. That's how I take those steps forward
Mhm.
because I can tap into that part of my personality and take that next step and just move forward and go, you know what, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what happens. We're just going to move forward.
Well,
So,
and
and
I think a lot of us, I'm not big on, I don't know my Enneagram number. My students are all into it, but I've not taken the time to figure it out. But I do know that I have always had a tendency to catastrophize. And that early on, when you start thinking about, oh, well, we're all on lockdown. And I remember going to the grocery store in a mask and gloves and thinking, is this going to be the day that I get COVID?
well, we
And
didn't know, right? I did the same thing.
we
Did you
didn't
go home
know.
and we came home and bleached off all the surfaces of all of our groceries? I remember doing that.
Yeah, and I think somewhere along the way, I had to say to myself, we can still have the proper precautions, and we still do. I mean, we all keep hand sanitizer in our cars now that we didn't before, and lots of things. But I don't constantly think about, am I one step away from death? Because that's
Yeah.
that's part of our resilience. We start to learn to distance ourselves from catastrophizing because that's
Right.
not a healthy state to be in.
No, not at
And
all.
and you just have to, I mean, with me, I feel it coming. I start imagining all the things, like you said,
Mhm.
I've got to prepare for worst case scenario. And I just say, no, Sonya, we are not going there. That's not
Yeah.
useful.
Right.
Just,
And I think that's where learning to self-coach is so valuable. And
yeah,
just that's where the value of coaching comes in.
yeah.
Right. You have helped me get through many things this year, just in taking next steps and seeing myself differently. Helping me see things in myself that I didn't see for myself.
Hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's where that value of coaching is so beneficial. Like I don't know if I would have gotten through this year without
Of course
without
you
that.
would have
I
some
would have gotten
way.
through it, yes. But would I have taken the steps? Would I've done? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I do think it's so valuable.
Yeah, one of the reasons that coaches, I mean, even coaches get coached because we sometimes can't see what's right up close.
Right.
We can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak.
Right.
And
And I
that's what
think,
happens. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's what happens in our own thoughts. It
Right.
all just blows up and we can't see that we're blowing it up.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that you helped me the most with was how to balance it, right? And not feel guilty
Mhm. Yeah.
for taking the steps that I was taking or the choices that I was making for me and my family. Because one of the things we talked about was the fact that we all had to sort of our work life and our home life and even school life, like for our kids, everything suddenly went into one space.
Yeah.
And we had to figure it out. How are we going to make this work? And so, for me, it was literally creating an office space in my house. I don't have an extra room. This
Hmm.
is where I am. This is where I work. And if you can't see it, I know you're listening to the podcast. What we did was create a space in like what used to be the breakfast nook, right? And that's what we did. And that's just one more step, right? It's let's
Yeah.
figure this out. And that's kind of how I feel like this whole year has been. Let's figure this out.
Right. Well, yeah, when you said that, I was thinking, a year ago, your office space looked very different
Yeah.
because a year ago you had a job you went to and that was just your study space at home.
Right.
And when COVID hit, you all had to pivot and actually, I mean, I don't think anybody looking at it now wouldn't realize that hasn't always been an office.
Right. It's literally the breakfast nook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, on the other side of me is like the stove, right? So, but it's fine and it works out and it's what we had to do and my husband is a genius and knows how to do stuff. So, it's not perfect, but it works.
Yeah.
And so, but I think everybody probably has stories like that, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners could tell how if they really think about it, they can look back over their lives and see how they've figured out how to balance. And, and when I say balance, I don't mean 50-50, right?
Mm-mm.
But I think 50-50 balance it's not really possible, right?
Yeah.
Some things have to give, right? So
Yeah.
we just some things get more weight than others. And I think that's one of the things that you helped me realize was that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to not have it 50-50.
Well, and people talk about balance, but yet when what they really want in their lives is to feel good all the time, to be happy all the time, to feel like they're making progress all the time. And that's not balance.
Mm-hmm.
Balance is when things are good, we're going with it, we're moving along. But when something like COVID hits, then we figure out how to cope with that
Mm-hmm.
because we're never going to be always happy. We're never going to be always, like you said, balance is an illusion, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. We're
Mm-hmm.
always trying to keep the sense of everything being okay, knowing that all the feelings are going to come.
Yeah.
Fear is going to come. Um,
Anxiety.
Anxiety is gonna come, yeah.
But you know what else comes is joy. Joy does come out of it, right? Because when I can say that one of the things that happened this year was I was dreading this. So okay, I was really really anxious because part of the reason I went back to grad school was so that I could qualify for a promotion. Because it was a requirement to have a master's degree to get my job now. And so I remember vividly early last year thinking, sort of dreading getting the job because I was going to miss my children. I knew it
Mhm.
was going to take a lot more time and I wasn't going to have the freedom to go have lunch with them every day at school or whenever I wanted to. I wasn't going to have the freedom that I had um, back when I was working part-time and going to school full-time. I wasn't going to have as much freedom to be with them and to hang out with them and to enjoy watching them grow up. And then COVID hit and it was like, this is sort of a blessing in disguise. I get to be with them. I mean,
All the
now
time.
all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just, and I think a lot of people can have a similar story.
Yeah. I hope so because I think it has been such a gift. We've homeschooled our 7-year-old this year, and I joke about it a lot because we have 6 kids between us, but we've never homeschooled before. That has never been on our radar, and so I joke a lot about if we're how much therapy he's gonna need someday. But the fact of the matter is this is a gift that has been so fun, even though it has its challenging days and its days where where I think my husband and I both feel like we failed miserably, it's going to be something that we look back on and remember, and that time that we've had with him, watching him grow, that we haven't had to, we haven't gotten to have with the
Experience
other
that.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just know that it's been a weird year. Right? It's been weird, it's been a blessing, it's been hard in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of people can say that. Um, I've learned how to set new boundaries, and,
Hmm.
sometimes I let them down, and I have to reestablish, and, it's just a lot.
Well, but it's a microcosm. It's like we've had our whole lives kind of compressed into this year.
Mhm.
We've had a lot of big experiences in 1 year in many
Mm.
ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the coaching industry over the last year has just blown up.
Yeah.
And I think it's because people are trying to figure out, what's the best way for me to stay on top of all of the changes that are happening, one on top of the other.
Right. And I also think we have to figure out a way forward, right? So
Mhm,
what do we do with the past year and the lessons that we've learned and the fact that I was dreading the fact that I wasn't going to get to spend as much time with my kids and then I was forced to? Like what do we do with that information and how do we move forward? And do we then allow ourselves to set those boundaries because we say, you know what? I value the time with my kids and my family.
mhm,
And so, no, we're not going to do taekwondo and baseball.
mhm.
We're going to choose one or the other,
Yeah,
you know, um, or whatever. And I think those are the kinds of things when we're looking forward from this moment is how do we take what we've learned and how do we take next steps? And how do we want our future to look, right? You were
yeah,
talking about that in the last podcast. It was,
yeah,
how do you want your future self to be and stepping into that? And so and I think that's where we really need to, that's the next step, right?
yeah. So what are some things that you're already talking about, making the children choose one activity instead of two, trying to,
Hmm.
push everything in there. Are there other lessons that you're trying to incorporate as you move forward? I mean, now that we have a vaccine, I think we're all beginning to imagine a time when we don't have so much crammed into into our time and space. So when things go back to some sense of normalcy, what are you gonna do differently?
I don't know because I tell you what, with this promotion, I have been working a lot.
Mhm,
And so I sit in this room early in the morning and I'm here all day. And then I have been working past, my kids walk in and I've been really bad about, my husband cooks dinner and then I sit in here until dinner time. And then a lot of times I'm coming back in here.
mhm,
And I need to that's one of those things that I keep telling myself, "What am I gonna do when I go back to the office? Because I'm gonna have
mhm.
to leave." Like, I have to leave at the end of the day.
Uh-huh.
And so, there's a part of me that's like, "I've gotta figure that out now. How do I leave at the end of the day? I
Yeah,
need to have a cutoff point." So,
yeah,
there's things like that, just lessons that we're just
yeah.
trying to figure out.
Setting a
Um,
boundary for yourself then is gonna be
yeah,
one of those things that you're working on.
right, and not allowing my job to literally take over my life,
Right.
because I don't want it to, because that's
Mhm.
not healthy,
Yeah.
right?
And a job can't do that anyway. It's not a living, breathing thing. We
Right.
allow it to. I mean, but that's the language that we use all the time.
Right, is it the job took over my life? No, I
Yes.
let it.
Yeah.
Right, and so, with that, by changing it, by saying the job took over my life to saying I let the job take over my life, that gives me
Mm.
that control back.
Yeah.
That makes me realize that I have control over what I do with my time,
Yeah.
and so, you know, it's empowering in that way
Mhm.
to see that, no, I don't have to work into the night. Now, of course, if there's a deadline or something, then I'll do what
Sure.
I need to do, but, you know,
Yeah.
anyway.
I think one of the things that, I have been working on for a couple of years, but that I'm really starting I feel like I'm starting to make some progress on this in the last year because I've practiced it so much, is, giving myself the grace
Mhm.
that I would give somebody else
Mhm.
when I don't do it quite right, when I don't have it figured out quite right.
Yeah.
Um, I think many of us, I'm Gen Xer too, and I'm older than you, so we'll not talk about birthdays this year and what might be coming up for me in a few months. But I was not raised in a way where I was ever taught to give myself a lot of grace.
Mm.
I judged myself very harshly and never met the standard that I had set for myself. And one of my very best friends, who I went to the PhD program with her, and she always, her mantra was, you need to give yourself some grace. You
Mm.
need to give yourself some grace. You wouldn't judge me that way. Why are you judging yourself that way? And I think that's one of the things that I've really tried to take, like I said, over the last couple of years, but really I feel like I've made some headway this year because I've gotten lots of practice
Mm.
at just being okay with figuring things out along the way. It really is the journey. We hear that it's on a mug, whatever. It's a little trendy, but it really is the journey that our lives are all about. So, what can I learn? What have I screwed up? And what am I going to do better next time?
Yeah. I mean, grace is so grace is about giving you something you don't deserve, right?
Mhm.
It's giving you that space to just be and figure it out
Yeah.
and to not be perfect,
Yeah.
right? And it's so important for us to extend that to other people, our kids especially. Like
Mhm.
I think of all the people that have been resilient this year, man, our kids have really stepped it up, right?
Yeah. They have.
I mean, I know that I'm supposed to be on them for great for not grades necessarily, but I mean, I expect a certain level of just as a mom, I
Uh-huh.
expect a certain level of,
Sure.
effort, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, I didn't have to do work on a Chromebook when I was in
Right.
school. I didn't have to, you know, do a PowerPoint. I mean, my 9-year-old can do a PowerPoint presentation. Like you know, meanwhile, you and I were in fourth grade, like playing Oregon Trail
Right. What?
on,
What was
on the
Oregon Trail?
Commodore,
I don't even
on, on the Commodore, right? Come on. So, and my kids actually like Oregon Trail. It's funny,
That's
but yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. So I just think they also gosh, we have put so much on them. And so I think extending grace as a mom, just being like, you know what? It is
Mhm.
what it is.
Yeah.
And you're going to do great. You're going to be fine.
Mhm.
I still expect, passing grades and stuff, but yeah, because that also kind of, in a way, I feel like it lets the teachers off the hook too. Like,
Oh, yeah. I
so,
yeah, I can't say enough for elementary school, middle school, high school teachers. I mean, I just can't imagine what their job has been like this year.
yeah,
And so I give them they all get an A plus in my book for just dealing with
absolutely.
this
Yeah.
this year. So it is all about grace and balance. And I guess as we wrap it up today, one of the things that I want our listeners to think about is looking back. We don't look back, like I said at the beginning, we don't look back a lot in coaching. But I think over the next week or so, take this time to reflect. How have you been resilient through this year?
Yes.
What have you learned? What have you survived? How have you grown? And really take some time to celebrate that, to think about how that's going to affect your journey moving forward.
Yeah.
We've all, it's been a year. We've heard that more than once, and it has been, but it's been a year full of opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
I,
And
I'm
yeah,
ready for a
redefine.
vacation for the next year.
I know, right?
But I think, I think there's been a lot that we could take from it and learn from it. So for that, I'm thankful.
Absolutely. Me too. And I just think, yeah, moving forward, it's just a matter of what can I take from what I learned, what we've been through, and how do I want to apply what we've done moving forward, and what kind of things do I want to change?
Hmm.
You know, have I created some bad habits that I need to change?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. We've all done that too. That's
Or good habits that I want to keep. I mean,
right.
there's a lot of things that go into it. I don't want to just focus on that and bad, but
No,
you
but
know,
that's what I think that's why I think reflection is so important, because it gives us a chance to examine it as a whole.
yeah. But I really like the idea of putting those successes down. What have we done? What have we accomplished in the last year?
Yeah.
And seeing, I think that's going to be great for your listeners to do.
Yeah. All
And
right. Well, thank
celebrate
you
that.
so much, Jennifer. I appreciate you joining me today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. it was it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
one of my highlights of my week, and it's killed me that I haven't been able to meet with you in the last month very often. And so, yeah, I appreciate you so much.
thank you
And
very much. If you're listening to this podcast and you are looking for an opportunity to coach with me, you can look me up at sonyagreencoaching.com. And until then, we'll see you next week on the Coach's Cup.
bye. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks.